Welcome in to another episode of the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour podcast. I'm Olgun Uluc. As you can see, no Kane Pittman this week. And I am assured that it's not because his Geelong Cats lost the AFL Grand Final by 1 billion points. He is, in fact, travelling. And so why not bring in someone who I wanted to talk to about basketball for a while, Olympian, but ESPN's very own, Ryan Broekhoff. Ryan, welcome. I'm very excited to talk about this week because big performances around the NBL, some upsets, but I'm mainly looking at the ginormous individual showings that we saw from a couple of guys. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, and it's also my Geelong Cats that took a bit of a hiding, so I'm still recovering from that, but I'm still going to turn up with you, Olgun, and we're going to chat through some of the fun stuff that happened in round two.
All right, so the most unsurprising thing that happened in round two was Bryce Cotton unleashing on the Brisbane Bullets. 39 points, his first game for the Adelaide 36ers, and it just looked like vintage Bryce. It's everything we know him to be. It's the guy who's coming off on balls and attacking at deep drops. It's him hitting the most impressive shots you'll ever see. But 39 points, almost half of Adelaide's points. What stood out to you in that one?
I mean, it's just Bryce being Bryce. Should we be surprised at how good he was and how efficient he was on the offensive end? And yes, Brisbane had some injuries, which we'll get to in a little bit, but 14 of 23 from the field, 6 of 9 from three. He was efficient. He had 15 points in the first quarter alone. And poor Tristan Devers and these kind of guys who just got thrown in the deep end against the most accomplished scorer, the toughest one-on-one guard to cover in the league. Bryce has not lost any of his quickness. His ability to create space and rise up and hit shots is still next level. And as always, he's drawing 4-point plays, and you're just like, how do people keep falling for this? How does he keep drawing these type of plays? But he was phenomenal. And what also really, watching the game, what really impressed me was his ability to create for others. He saw, and Brisbane made some changes on the defensive end. Bryce is killing us in the drops. We're going to hard show him. And you just invited that double team and started picking them apart with a pass just to get others involved. But geez, Bryce, I mean, settle down. It's only round one. We've got a long season ahead. If he's going to average something like this, just put another MVP trophy in his case.
Yeah, so it's worth talking about Brisbane going into this game. No Mitch Norton. He'll be out for around 8 weeks. He had that hyperextension in their first game. No Sam McDaniel in this one, which is obviously huge. He suffered an ankle injury in Brisbane's game against Cairns. That was their first loss of the round. And so, like you said, they go into this matchup, and the first matchup on Bryce Cotton is Taine Murray, a rookie, someone who sort of was projected to be at the end of Brisbane's bench, all of a sudden thrust into the starting lineup. Just not an ideal matchup for Bryce Cotton. And then Tristan Devers comes off the bench. He's a matchup for him too. So they just didn't have any reasonable matchup for someone like Bryce. But Ryan, the thing that impressed me most about Adelaide is Bryce did what he did, and he's going to do that all the time. It's unsurprising. But I really like the bigs. I like Zylan Cheatham playing alongside him. He had 8 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists. He was everywhere. His reads out of the short roll was something I've never seen from Cheatham before, at least not at that level. So that was impressive. I think there's going to be like a Bryce and Ice pick and roll situation that we're going to see all season long. I think Isaac Humphrey's ability to set screens, to flip them quickly, to get out of them real quick. His mobility is underrated. So it's not just Bryce. Bryce is like the crux of it, right? He is what this team is built around. But they are so dynamic and mobile, and they just have the potential to be so potent.
Yeah, and this is a game that DJ didn't even get going really offensively, and how quickly he can change a game with his outside shooting too. And I really like Flynn Cameron to start the game, getting into the lane, getting Isaac Humphreys involved, some easy ones, just to take some of the pressure off Bryce. Not that he needs the pressure taken off, but there will be parts during the game where Bryce needs to go off the ball a little bit. Bryce is on the bench for a minute or two. Who's going to be that next guy that can create and help and run this offense on? And Cheatham, as you said, was fantastic out of that short roll. Doubling Bryce, taking him away, and his threat to one dribble from the free throw line and posterize someone's always there. So the help comes early. They're finding shooters. It was still a growing session for Adelaide. I think they still are not completely on the same page on the offensive end, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. And but Brisbane missing some key pieces definitely hurt them. If you had two players that you're thinking, you could throw at Bryce and do somewhat of an okay job, it's the size and physicality of a McDaniels who can move his feet laterally and physically, hold up Bryce, and then Mitch Norton, who played with Bryce forever and knows him as good as anybody. But missing those two, putting in the young guys. I like some of the young guys fight. Devers was getting physical, trying to get up and in with Bryce, but at the same time, they were kind of just agitating him. Like Bryce was going along, and then you start annoying him and getting into him, and he had enough. There's a few stares at the refs, like, you're going to call this? All right, I'm just going to make things happen. You're on an island now. I'm going to put up a ridiculous 39 on great efficiency. So there's definitely Bryce part, but as you said, I think the roster is coming together nicely, and I think we're going to talk about their new import, and hopefully you have a little bit more information than I do of how he's going to fit into this, because you had another piece coming off the bench, another big, which I think they desperately need, but does he have the right skill sets to complement the other players?
Yeah, so I'm happy if I'm Adelaide, I'm happy that I got through this game unscathed as far as Isaac Humphrey staying out of foul trouble, Zylan Cheatham being able to stay on the floor, because they were waiting for this week, which is when the new import Nick Rakocevic comes in. So he's 6'11" big, can stretch it a little bit. He's a skilled big who is going to be an unbelievably functional guy coming off the bench for them. They had no depth at the 4 and 5. Their backup 4 was Matt Kenyon. Their backup 5 was theoretically Blake Jones, who's a nominated replacement player. So they had no depth there. Now they bring in a 6'11" big, averaged about 14 and 8 in Puerto Rico. And when you look at some of the bigs in the NBL who were starters, those guys went and averaged 14 and 8 in Puerto Rico over the offseason too. So he's someone who's at the level, comes in, gives them much needed depth at that spot. And from what I understand, he will be here for this week's game. And then I think the team is going to wait a little bit to see what they need at that other import spot, because they do have that to use. Did you see any? It's very early, and it was against a Bullet team that was undermanned and underdone. But did you see any indicators on what this team might need? Because when I speak around Australian basketball, everyone says something different on what they need.
It's an interesting one. I think stretch 4, if Rakocevic is able to stretch out and shoot the 3, I think that makes him a little bit more dynamic. Maybe some pick and pop action. A little bit harder to trap the on-ball with Bryce if you've got a shooter popping out and putting teams in rotation. But I think maybe another defensive piece. I think Matt Kenyon has a really important role at times, but can you feel that with, a player can also score the ball on the other end, a 3-and-D type wing, or potentially a legitimate pass-first point guard, just to kind of take some of the ball handling duties, responsibilities off Bryce and off Flynn Cameron, and someone more of a setup type player, just to kind of get the offense moving, share it around a little bit more. But look, they're in a fantastic position, and Bryce obviously getting his citizenship changes things, and the flexibility within that roster. Montrez, that situation now may, in hindsight, be a positive in some respects, in how they can kind of shape the roster, and not having so many players similar type non-shooting bigs who, yes, can score inside, but kind of hurt your spacing at times. So look, they've got a fun puzzle that they get to figure out. And you got Bryce, you got DJ, you got Flynn Cameron, you got Humphreys, you got Cheatham. It's not a bad starting 5 to begin with, and now you just fit these pieces around them.
Yeah, and to wrap up on the 36ers, one thing that I heard speaking to people around the Sixers after that win was that everyone felt good. there was no bickering. The vibes are really good right now. And I don't know if that team, if it had Montrezl Harrell, do they play with the same flow? Do they play with the same sort of spacing and quickness and dynamism? I don't know if they do that. And so this Montrezl Harrell thing, yeah, we said it last week with Kane. Yeah, he's an entertainer, and it sucks for the league to lose someone like that. But this is a blessing in disguise for the Adelaide 36ers. Speaking of high-profile NBA big men coming to the NBL, JaVale McGee, in his first game for the Illawarra Hawks, put up 32 points on 20 shots, 13 rebounds, 3 blocks, looked absolutely unstoppable in the post, had some footwork that I didn't know he had, still has some athleticism in his late 30s. Watching JaVale McGee do that in his first game, it was very cool to see someone sort of announce himself as he's not the new face of the league, but someone who can be up there as one of the faces of the league. But what an awesome performance from him. And what was it like? What was it like watching someone be so imposing down low as a
I
lob
mean, it
threat? What
was
was it like
somewhat
watching him out
surprising.
there?
We've always watched JaVale in the NBA as that role player, basically finishing off lobs, doing all the dirty work, the defensive stuff. We didn't really see a lot of the offensive packages unless it was on the negative end. We would have a silly turnover and we'd all sort of have a chuckle at it. But he was incredibly dominant against what we would consider the best defensive big man in the league in McVeigh. So his extra size and length, he's got incredible wingspan and reach. There was at times he was completely out of gas and definitely needed a break at times, but it's become a rejuvenation of we need bigs in this league. We need legitimate 7-footers who can move and are skilled and lob threats around the rim, protect the paint. And JaVale McGee is as good as anybody right now. And I was pleasantly surprised at some of the footworks. There was a fadeaway jump shot in there. He faced up and hit a jumper, and some of the footwork, being able to spin off defenders and finish above the rim, he is going to be an absolute weapon in this league if he can, stay out of foul trouble, continue to work within this Illawarra system. But for a first up display, 32 and 13, 3 blocks and everything you said, 15 to 20 from the field against a player of McVeigh was truly impressive. Now, when McVeigh went off, I thought they probably had to send a double a little bit quicker. You're putting some young players in a really difficult situation trying to guard him one-on-one in the low block. But his size and length is going to be an absolute problem for everybody.
I mean, Kobe Williamson came onto the floor, and they
Poor
immediately
guy.
posted JaVale McGee up, and Scott Roth just chose to leave that rookie on an island. This is someone he didn't play in their first game. I don't know. He saw some spot minutes in their second game, I believe, but he came on and immediately had to guard JaVale McGee. And if you saw any of JaVale's time in Puerto Rico, I think you would have seen some of the footwork. I really like the sort of post move into a drop step, but like a step through. I don't really see that. I think everyone tries to get that 2-foot plant and try to get up, but he's got some mobility that I think is maybe understated. Where the mobility is, I think there's potentially going to be issues. And this is something that, again, we've seen teams do this over the recent history in the NBL, which is being that deep drops. JaVale McGee's drops was really fascinating. It's a little bit lower. It didn't seem like he really wanted to get out there and guard in space too much. And there were times, Brian, where we saw him basically just planted in the paint, Taco Fall style. And the jack jumpers just had shooters sort of running baseline to baseline, and they got really good looks out of it. So I don't know if it's going to be like a massive issue. I don't think it's going to be a Taco Fall level issue. But against a team like Tasmania, against Melbourne United, maybe against the Phoenix, teams that are a bit more organized, I feel like it could be something that may be an issue going forward.
Yeah, I'm hoping some of those really deep drops were just a fatigue issue that he was just, I'm pretty gassed. I'm carrying this team offensively. I need a little bit of a break. But there were multiple possessions where there was in the pick and roll or he got switched on the weak side and he just refused to leave the paint. He's like, okay, I'm going to give up this shot and I'll grab the rebound if he misses. But as you said, this league the margins are so small team to team. There's going to be different matchups and challenges each game. McVeigh and Bannon, you can probably hedge off a little bit more, especially McVeigh. Bannon's he shot the ball okay to start the year, but it's not his greatest strength. So you can play a little bit of a cat and mouse game, trying to force them to take some of the open shots, force them to take some shots that are just not necessarily within the offense and collect the rebounds. But you play against some other teams with some really strong stretch bigs that can shoot the ball really well. It could cause some extra problems. So, yes, he's going to protect the paint. Yes, that deep drops is quite a few teams are employing now. Harrison in Brisbane, and you even see Melbourne United at times. To do that, you need elite guards that can get over screens and pressure the ball and force the ball and the ball handle into the paint and not give up those open threes, not give up those easy mid-range pull-ups with the defender getting stuck on the screen and JaVale stuck in the paint. So if it is what they're going to do, they're going to do a better job of getting over screens and challenging shots and putting more pressure on the ball, because if not, guys in this league are too good. Bigs in this league are getting too skilled. You're going to get picked apart in that kind of coverage if you do it consistently.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, I think the two teams that are probably going to be able to exploit that are two of the more organized teams right now, which are Melbourne United and the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, they faced each other in the first throwdown of the season. And it
Mm-hmm.
was a tight game for the most part. I was in that building, and it got to a point where Nathan Sobey hit a shot toward the end of the third quarter, and I think the Phoenix got out to a 4-point lead, but then it was just Melbourne United from that point on. They went on a 22-0 run from the end of the third quarter, stretching in to the start of the fourth quarter, and it was a mixture of Milton Doyle doing his thing. It was United's bench being able to step up, and they have a really cool bench unit that's able to guard really well and play with pace. But the first throwdown of the season, did you get any real indicators out of this? Is Melbourne as good as we all think they are? And is Southeast Melbourne, while there was a 20-point loss at the end of that one, are you seeing some indicators there that they're going to be more fine than people realize?
I think the Phoenix is going to be fine. I think, if anything, from the Phoenix side, it sort of highlighted maybe the piece or what they're missing from that roster. And Sober was fantastic through three quarters, but that's one man trying to go up against Melbourne United, and he looked fatigued at times. He took a couple rash shots at different points in the game just because Phoenix struggle to find that secondary scorer. If Glover's not coming off the bench and hitting shots, if Foxwell's not getting in the paint and creating for others, we forget how good defensively Melbourne United have been for years and years and years, and they're able to turn those screws up. So can you find some consistent scoring outside of Sobey? I think that's going to be the challenge from the Phoenix. But for the first three quarters, as you said, it was back and forth, and really I felt like Phoenix were on top even in that first quarter. They were forcing turnovers. They were uncharacteristic turnovers from United, and what you would expect from experienced squad that probably watched that Phoenix Cairns game, where Phoenix just completely dismantled them with their full court pressure. So was surprised to see so many turnovers early, but then they just started getting hot from three. United just kind of kept the scoreboard ticking over. They made their threes. I think they went 14-22 for the game, which is ridiculous efficiency. And then, as you said, the bench unit, they had 5, 6, 7 guys in double figures. That's tough to stop. You take away one thing, they've got someone else who can step up. Finn Delaney, I thought, was really good. Tyson Walker had his moments, and defensively, we've seen some stuff with him in the full court, getting some steals and layups. Milton Doyle was fantastic. We're getting from Shea Illy. Krebs steps up and hit threes, and Krizovic is the one that's, I guess, been a little bit of a surprise. He's kind of finished off tight games. Coach seems to trust him in the pivotal moments over Edwards, who's in his own right been really good in the first few weeks. And the biggest point is they're still doing this without Chris Goulding. Chris Goulding hasn't played a game yet. He offers an exceptional outside shooter that opens the things up for everyone else. So, look, they're a complete team. They're a dangerous team. They cover all the bases. I didn't even mention Dash Daniels, who has just shown more than glimpses in these games. He's shown a comfort level that seems unfamiliar for a 17-year-old to come into the men's league and feel at home and feel comfortable, get into the lane. His shot looks confident. Like, this team has as good a chance, and they're playing as good as anyone. It's very early in the season, but a team that we should just expect. Top two is normally what they finish. We should expect them probably to be in the hunt again.
Yeah, so the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, like you mentioned, that they were missing sort of that creator scorer type, and from what I understand, that is the thing that they're more than likely eyeing. They've gone back and forth about the sort of spot that they want to fill that last import spot with, and they've looked at like some 3-and-D guys that like they've gauged a bunch of different options, but it feels like they're ultimately going to land on a sort of creator, someone who can go and sort of create an advantage out of nothing, like a. Think of what United has in Milton Doyle and Tyson Walker. That's the type of player that they want, but they also don't want to sacrifice their identity. He's being able to play up and in and play really hard-nosed on the defensive end. Both of those teams have matchups with the Pelicans this week. So you have Melbourne United going up against the Pels on Friday. The New Orleans Pelicans landed this morning. We're recording this on a Tuesday. They landed this morning in Melbourne, and then we have the Phoenix against the Pelicans on Sunday. So we'll see if either team's able to get anything out of that game. It's NBA rules, so we'll see how that affects the games too. But the two teams that, they're still, these are two teams that I think have figured out a little bit. And so hopefully it'll be a really good experience. I'm here in Melbourne, so I'm excited for those. We've never had an NBA team come down here and play basketball games, so that'll be very, very exciting. One of the other stories of this week were the Cairns Taipans. They went 2-0, led by Jack McVeigh, who is leading from the front. From a scoring perspective, from a creation perspective, it was initially that tight win over the Brisbane Bullets, which could have gone either way. And then it was a surprise win over the Sydney Kings. And we say surprise not because the Cairns Taipans shouldn't be good, but it's because the Sydney Kings were largely healthy. Obviously, no Kelly Pepe, but the Sydney Kings home opener, they weren't able to get a lot of points on the board, shot it abysmally from 3. But the Taipans go 2-0 this week after that horrible loss to the Phoenix in round 1. And it's not just Jack McVeigh. We're seeing Andrew Andrews step up and provide a ton of impact as a scoring guard that the team needed. And Ryan, they're doing this without Sam Wardenberg as well. So this isn't some team that's fully fledged and fully functioning and doing this. They're doing this undermanned. Andrew Andrews was cramping all over the place in both of those games as well. So is a team that's slowly, after a horrible start, they're putting this together a little bit, aren't they?
They are, and it was very impressive, the 2 wins. The Brisbane game could have gone either way, but having someone like McVeigh, who you can give the ball to down the stretch, you're going to get good, clean looks. He's made a knack of making big shots here in the NBL, so we shouldn't be surprised to see that again. But Andrew Andrews was fantastic. Yes, he battled through, I think, calf, quad, hamstring, low back tightness, cramping. He was struggling to get through the games, and it's fair enough. You just got off the plane 30 hours before game 1, and then it's not easy to jump straight into a high level competition like the NBL. But his experience and his shot making at certain points was elite, and someone who can also set things up, run the team, run the offense. Against the Phoenix, that full court pressure, they didn't have the ball handler that could handle that and then get them through the offense. They got taken out and blown out too easy. But I was surprised to see Brisbane not try and employ some of that, getting up full court, trying to raise the tempo. Kansas, for me, being a team that likes to play up tempo and wants to score a bunch of points and full of athletes running up and down the lane, this season it's almost like they've completely changed. They're more of a slow, half-court, grinded out type of offense. You've got shooters running across everywhere. Rain Smith's shooting it as soon as he walks in the building. Like, he wakes up in the morning and he's open and he's ready to shoot. And you pair that with McVeigh, who's really doing everything. Almost a triple-double in the game against Brisbane, hit more big shots against Sydney on the weekend as well. He is the complete player. He is the leader of this team. All this noise about, is he worth the big paycheck that they paid him? Absolutely. So far this season, absolutely. He's efficient offensively. He gets other guys involved. He plays at his own pace. He is a great centerpiece to build this team around. And both Brisbane and Sydney have great wing elite defenders. And he just finds a way to score. He gets to his spot. That little turnaround, fadeaway over his shoulder is just unguardable, unblockable. He keeps you off balance. He loves playing off balance, the slow finishes around the rim. He's been tremendous through these 3 games, and it was great for Cairns to rebound after what was such a poor game 1 against the Phoenix.
Yeah, 19-9-9 in that game against Brisbane. Followed that up with 24 points against the Sydney Kings. And I'm with you. I'm surprised that, one, the Sydney Kings' length and defense wasn't able to stifle McVeigh more, but also that teams haven't looked at what the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix did. And yeah, Andrew Andrews is in the lineup, but how are you not following that lead? Is that not the blueprint to beat this Taipans team, to make sure to pressure up the floor and make sure that they have difficulty bringing it over half court and make it hard to get into their offense? I'm surprised that more teams aren't doing that. But with this Sydney Kings team, do you see red flags, or is this just like an anomaly of a performance? Because you look what they shot 4 of 28 from 3. Now, I don't think this Kings team is an amazing shooting team at the best of times when you just look at their roster. But 4 of 28 from 3 is obviously not very good. Kendrick Davis, I think, took a lot of tough shots in that second half. But do you think this is sort of maybe remnants of some of the struggles offensively we saw last season? They were a bottom 4 offense last season. Do you think this is just early season teething and they've got to figure it out? Again, they're playing a Taipans team that's playing their 3rd regular season game versus their first game of the season. So are there red flags here, or are you, obviously we're going to wait to see more, obviously, but are you seeing bad indicators?
It's sort of yellow flags right now. Just game 1, you got to kind of give them a little bit of leeway. I didn't like how the ball basically didn't move on the offensive end. It was very guard heavy, dribbling the air out of the ball, just straight into pick a one or isolation type action. Guys like Jalen Galloway basically weren't involved in the first half. Even Cooks wasn't heavily involved, and at times actually looked out of sync at times offensively. They missed a lot of easy ones to begin the game around the basket, whether it was Cook or Suarez, some ones you expect them to make, but they just didn't get enough players involved early. I think Daly was 5-15. Kendrick Davis took 27 field goals to get 21 points. If you're having 43, 42 shots between your starting backcourt, it doesn't leave a lot for everyone else. So, I think they'll remedy some of that stuff. I think the shooting will even out over games. I just think they need to find better offense, more spacing, more creation for others instead of Kendrick Davis is fantastic. He's one of the best players in the league, and he can get a bucket whenever he wants. He can score and get to spots. He's quick and dynamic and can score from everywhere. But at times that was kind of the default of the offense. It wasn't get through some stuff, move the ball, and then get it back to Kendrick, low shot clock or at the end of the shot clock into a pick and roll, let him score after everyone's touched it. It was some early actions, early shots, a lot of mid-range shots, deep mid-range shots, which analytically aren't always the best, but I think we'll see a change. I think Daly will get more involved on the creation side. They like to, and they ran it a few times. I had him out of the post on the guards and had him create, but 42 shots between those guys. You'd like to see Cooks get more involved. You'll have to see Jalen Galloway after his offseason with the Boomers and what he did and the hype for him leading into this season and just kind of move the ball. As you said, I don't know if they've got knockdown elite three-point shooters like some of the other teams, but overall they should be much better than what they showed in this first game. But we'll put it down to first game nerves, first game rust, and we'll see how they go going forward.
Yeah, I think reasonable to put it down to an anomalous shooting performance. The talent is obviously there. They're too talented not to be good. I just don't like seeing Xavier Cooks and Jalen Galloway as bystanders. And passengers. I want them to be primary parts of this offense. And in order for the Kings to succeed, I think they need that. They have an opportunity to amend this on Saturday against the New Zealand Breakers, another home game. So the Breakers are a team that's struggling. The Sydney Kings have an opportunity to go and put a stamp to start their season. But look, that's all we got time for Ryan. I appreciate you joining me in Kane's absence. We don't talk basketball enough. I don't get to do this sort of stuff with you. So don't be a stranger. Let's absolutely do this again. Make sure to watch Nothing Bennett Aussie Hoops on Thursday night on ESPN. That's also on Disney Plus. Every NBL game is also on Disney Plus. We have a lot of NBA and NBL content coming this week on ESPN.com.au as well. NBA Media Days were today. So keep an eye out for all of that stuff. Until next time, I'm Olgun Uluc. That's Ryan Broekhoff. We'll see you next time.